hope everyone can hear me. Good evening, good evening, good evening. I think I'm live. And as you know, I won't go into the whole concept of playing Manningsman sponsors because I, I, I'm one of those, what we call it, seasoned people, senior people who can't recall how to do these things. So, when you have your grandmother, your grandfather, and they can't recall how to do certain things because it's so newer, that's me. Good night, Marvin. Good night, S Technic. Bless up, brother Gunner's boss. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I seem to have picked an interesting time to come and talk to you this evening since it's always a Friday evening busy time, but I figure it's a good time to talk given some of the things that have transpired lately. First, I want to say this, which is Super Bowl is this Sunday. Hope the team you pick wins, but there's only two teams, so and only one can win. I don't have a favorite. My team that I want to win was Baltimore, since my New York teams do not do well. Let me know if you can hear me, by the way, before I start running my mouth. Let me know if you can hear me. Because I'm assuming you can, because I did check my headset before I come on. But let me know if you can hear me before I start running into this. I start talking a lot. Let me just check to make sure all these apparatuses work well. So just drop something in the chat to see if you can hear and hear clearly. That'd be appreciated. Good night, everyone. Please let me know if you can hear me. I think I was talking to myself a little bit. So it's an interesting time actually. Super Bowl is here, as mentioned before. Hopefully we have a great game. The most important thing is to have a great game because a lot of times we have blowouts. But two good teams, two very good teams, one great quarterback, one good quarterback. So it should go as well. And I'll say this also, which is, excuse me, I just finished watching the Liverpool Arsenal game again for the third time. I'm not sure if I've ever been happier in winning a game, given how much flack my team was getting. But it's good night, Mystic Z Nat. Thanks for joining. It's a great feeling having won that game because, as you know, last year we bottled it. We were doing really well last year. Had like an 8-point lead at one time, even though City had a game or two in hand. But we bottled it. So that was bad. That was bad. So hopefully this year we don't get in front. We are behind, like 2 or a point, a little bit behind, and then we can take it from there. Because when you get in front and you're being chased, I don't think my team handled that well, even though it's a young team. We don't handle being chased well. We need to be behind a little bit and not be in front. But hopefully we can do well this season. As you can see from the title of the discussion this evening, the two main topics is one is the injunction, or lack thereof, frankly, it's been lifted. And the other is the discussion of the night, because you note on Coach's desk, Dennis was talking to Minzy about a number of different things: financial situation, girl situation, injunction. I didn't listen to the whole conversation. I picked up pieces of it because I was busy. But we touch upon the pieces that I sort of listened to and focused on. I would say around the injunction, the question is, where do we go from here as it relates to the election? I get the sense from what Dennis is saying that this will now move forward. The injunction has been lifted. The court initially, as you can recall, just historically, we can go back and talk about, Raymond Anderson's team. Raymond, Dave Cameron, and others were part of a team where the opposition in this election had, an organization affiliated with Beach Soccer, which was the historical organization, had brought a case to the court saying they were being disenfranchised because they should have been the affiliate of the JFF and were not allowed to be because another organization was formed, which was accepted by the JFF as the official organization. And they had sued in the court to stop this, and the judge had issued an injunction to preclude this from happening, to hear the case. The judge have heard the case. I've read the result of this, and it clearly stipulates that The evidence that was provided wasn't enough, or the merits of the case weren't enough to allow this organization to be recognized and for this to move forward. So we're back to square one, whereby it appears the more recently formed Beach Football Association will be the body that's officially designated and determined to be the body that the JFF will confirm as the one who are allowed to be part of the electorate and be able to vote. Now, I was on management program a little bit today, calling in, talking about what my perspective in all of this, because if you can recall, it was clear that the Beach Football Association, what their name is, had indicated, or Raymond's team indicated, they were not affiliated with that organization, right? So, which was interesting because they were only suing so they can be allowed to vote. And it appears that they were supported by the Raymond organization, but they went to great lengths of saying they're not affiliated, which is being cute, right? We know in substance they were. And it's the only reason why they're suing. So they could vote and probably not vote for the JFF. Well, apparently they are not now deemed to be the official organization. So will not be allowed to be designated accordingly and be allowed to vote, which then probably put 2 votes in the pocket of the JFF, because if the courts had deemed them to be the official organization, and it would have been a long, elongated process with FIFA and then not being allowed to sue and not using the arbitration of sport to do this. So it wouldn't, even if the courts had granted them that they should be, it would have been really messy. So maybe this is sort of the best outcome in some respects. Not necessarily for the JFF to get the spot, but more of to move the process forward, right? Because it would have been truly messy if FIFA was involved. And we may have had normalization, bans, whatever it is that road would lead us to. So it may have been the best outcome in some respects, but frankly, it is disappointing because from where I sit, my view is more of we want transparency and fairness in the process. And we seem to have aggrieved parties who are part of this, and that's why we end up in court. So it can't necessarily be a good thing, and it's very, very disappointing. And your hope would be that somehow, at some point, we can have really great resolution of this. Now, I'll digress here something by saying this. I was watching Oral Tracy today. I'll touch upon your question, Declan, or your comment. Oral Tracy today, and he was talking about he saw something which encouraged him with the political environment, because as you know, local elections are taking place in Jamaica this month before we have the real national elections. And he was indicating that he saw a lot of camaraderie coming together and joking between person of the two parties. And I'm really encouraged that. Let's hope it transfers over to general election and we have harmony in the electoral process versus what we normally have historically, a lot of animosity and sometimes killings, right? So we want to move away from that. So Declan, when I say it's actually 4 votes, Declan, in JFF. What are you talking about? Which is if the organization affiliated with Raymond's team was deemed to be the designee and be affirmed as the affiliate of the JFF, then they probably would have voted for Raymond's team. So they get 2 votes, which then means the JFF would have lost 2 votes. So really it's like 4 votes, frankly. You gain 2 and you'd have lost, you gain 2 and you'd have lost 2. So it's really like you could play a football game, you say it's a 6-point game. It's 4 votes basically. So in essence, the JFF made it like a bandit in this case, which is sort of disappointing, frankly, that it appears that the process may not be as transparent and as fair as it should be. And I'm sure it's very disappointing to Raymond's team to be in this situation, because losing 4 votes, I don't know what the composition is of the votes and who would have voted for whom. If you hear Rudolph Speed speaks, he seemed to be indicating that they had the votes. And you'd ask yourself, well, why are you protesting 4 votes or 2 votes if you already have the votes and you're comfortable winning? But maybe these 4 votes or 2 votes were included in that number that they really put them over the top and would allow them to win or easily win the election. So it has come out really well in their favor, and I'm sure they're extremely pleased. And I heard Dennis talk about this somewhat, even though I listened to everything that he said, was more around the fact that now the process can go along. And he also indicated that they have been keeping FIFA apprised of this situation, right? And everything is, it sort of provided a view that everything is okay. What I find interesting is that he's almost either saying that FIFA want the election to go ahead. That's what he was saying. And I didn't hear anything that suggests they want a fair, transparent, objective, open process, which means very, very disappointing. FIFA seem to be pushing to get to the end result outcome where they have people in their corner versus trying to make sure we have fair elections that would allow people to select the best person available to assume the positions that are being voted on. So that's very, very disappointing, frankly. Declan said, you mean votes are the pocket of Anderson? The election is between Anderson and Ricketts, not Anderson and the JFF. Well, it's between Anderson's team and the JFF, right? They are one and the same. Let's be frank, people. Anderson's team comprised Anderson himself, who's a vice president of JFF, and a number of individuals who are also members of the JFF. So it's one side versus the other. So we can double the semantics and saying they're two independent bodies, because they're not. And my view is that in Jamaica, not only in football, we need some independent third group to compete against the status quo, because the people in power, whether it's JLP, PNP, JFF subsidiaries, they're all one and the same. You hear Dennis talking tonight about being chairman of some waste organization. He's also have a contract with the GenSec. I'm not even sure how you run some organization. I'm not sure if he's on the board of the waste organization, if he runs the organization. Too many people have too many jobs in Jamaica, and there's not enough jobs to go around. So I'm not sure how that even works, right? The positions in the country are not being distributed as they should, and too many people have too many jobs. That's why they can't do their main jobs really well. If you're stretched, then how can you be effective in your role that you're executing when you're stretched across different avenues, different fields? So it's really interesting, actually. But not to digress from that, to go back to the point, which is, it's this one and the same JFF. Anderson's been in football for over 30 years, vice president for 18 years. So, yes, he leads the garbage company, whatever it is, the waste management organization. That's what he leads, actually. And I've seen him in different forums talking about this and talking about that. I guess when he joined them, they didn't have good budgets and good standards and good accounting, and now they have that, right? People are not complaining about just picking up waste, which I find interesting, because they're the consumers. If you're not picking up their waste timely or their garbage timely, that's a big issue. But it's another story for another day. I digress. But it's important, frankly, for us to have fair elections. I'm always an advocate of fair elections. And my concern is it doesn't really seem that way, just given all the things that we have heard. Now, Dennis also talks about the Constitution and the fact the Constitution was ratified, not even ratified by FIFA. They're part of the whole development, implementation, execution of the Constitution, which you've heard us talk about on these programs quite a bit. I know Nia went through the fine-tooth comb way back when, found a bunch of deficiencies in the Constitution. I've also gone through it. It's riddled with deficiency. And even when there are components of the Constitution which may seem to work, such as citizenship, no discrimination, they're still doing it with the under 20. So even when they may have things in the Constitution which seems right, which seems okay, which seem to well-intentioned, they're not executing against those things in the right way. And it's just very concerning, frankly. And life should not be that way. I'm always a proponent of fairness, of objectivity, of transparency, where transparency is warranted. And if we're saying this is a quasi-public organization which wants public support, which want public to attend game, be interested in the football, want fans to be informed, That I'm being told that, oh, the financial statements are secretive, the sponsorship deals that we have, and how much money we're going to get are secret. Everything seems to be secretive. A lot of times you hear football team, you hear Man U, Arsenal talk about a deal with Nike. They say we have 60 million per year, 300 million over 5 years. You go to JFF, everything is undercover. Everything is secretive. Why is that? Why is everything so concealed? Why can't we have more information, more insight, more transparency? It's amazing to me how that works. Why are you hiding stuff? That's what I'm going to call it, hiding. I think, as Minzy alluded to on the program, there were instances where information was published on the JFF website, both the financial statements, the Constitution. You go there and they disappear because someone called it out. And then Chung is going to tell us, well, the website wasn't that great. Well, the quality of the website have nothing to do with you removing documents which you said have been ratified by FIFA, or financial statements which you say have been ratified and confirmed and certified by independent public accounting firms. That makes no sense to anyone. And it's very disturbing. And I heard Dennis say tonight that the JFF is operating at a surplus. And maybe he needs to explain what that means to people, to lay persons who don't understand accounting, because, and he also said, if I'm not misquoting him, that, there were in a deficit of maybe some hundred number last year. You guys must remember conversation we had with Dennis. He was talking about surplus for a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. And he said almost the same 20 million number, which is really confusing. So I have to go back and check the files. So I'm sure he mentioned they were in a surplus before. And I was trying to explain to people that being in a surplus doesn't mean that you're in a good financial situation. Because surplus is mainly, he's talking about a 1 year number, meaning I made $10, my expenses were $8, I have $2 in surplus. But I could owe $10 million, frankly. So that means I'm in I could be net deficit, my net assets, or my net deficit, meaning my total assets I have, my cash, my equipment is valued at 10 million, but I owe some debtor 100 million. That means I'm 90 million in the hole, right? 100 minus 10. So those terms and those concepts and those ideas being proposed and communicated in the public domain need to be clarified and translated so people can clearly understand what you're saying. The question is, how much debt is the JFF in? And when will that debt be paid up? And where are we going forward? You would love to get more real-time financial information from the JFF, but we're not that lucky. Yes, we know about Tony Soprano. We know Jamaicans love the mafia and those way of speaking. But no, it was Dennis who mentioned that he's chairman of, I'm sure it's the organization that collects garbage. I'll call it a waste management company. And he was mentioning that, he was basically saying they put a structure in place for it to function well, but there were some other things that need to be worked on, such as complaints they have received of people not getting garbage picked up timely. But he was pleased with the progress and direction of travel, because progress would be made. And he's analogizing that to the JFF, which is they're making progress, they're getting better at what they're doing. They have protocols, standard procedures in place. And going forward, therefore, they will see that they would be in a better position. I assume that's what he's trying to articulate. Claudine is saying, Kranky, Dennis will tell you that you're speaking gossip. I'm not sure where Dennis was going with the gossip perspective, Claudine, because what Minzy was talking about is two things. One is things that he's been provided to him, and then what he believes. Now, what you believe can't be gossip. It's a belief. It's a perspective. It's your opinion and your view. That's what you believe. So if someone said, I believe in God, you can't say there's no God because you don't know. I believe in something. Versus trying to articulate something which may be deemed to be supposedly factual, but it's not factual. Right? And Minzy is saying that he's got information from his sources. I guess Dennis is disputing those sources. So it's interesting. But we'll never get consensus on those things. But I do find Dennis talks in a circle sometimes, and it's hard to follow what he's saying. And he was also saying that he has a 3-year contract, and I guess he's in a year plus into his contract. So even if a new organization took over, and by the way, it's not a new organization. It's just a few different people from the old organization. They're one and the same. Almost inferring that he would still have his seat And frankly, that's not normally the case how it works. They get paid off. You may settle on some amount, which is agreed on both parties, but I'm sure they would have cut Cameron, was supposed to be the finance expert. They would have no longer a need for Dennis. So Dave Cameron would have come in, assumed Dennis's position. They'd have to pay him off, just like they did the previous GenSec, frankly. You don't want to keep on paying off persons in certain positions because then it becomes very expensive. But they wouldn't, I'm sure they wouldn't keep him on the role. So I'm not sure that was very genuine by him saying that. But we want to see where we go from here. We love all the particulars around the completed injunction. Now, the organization moving forward in terms of the election, we want to make sure all the parties who can vote are affirmed and confirmed and are okay, frankly. We would love to see a very transparent, open, and most importantly, fair election to make sure that the affirmed parties, based on the Constitution that they keep referring to, are the ones that should be affirmed accordingly, and that we can get the election over with and move on to the football. Now, in terms of football, there was also a discussion this evening with Dennis about the girls, and that the girls were, it's my understanding the girls were paid. I'm gonna take a sip of water, which I find interesting. As you know, I had 3 interviews with Dennis talking about this subject, and we got nowhere. I think we had interviews way back in October, November, probably early December, and it was going around in a circle. Each time he come on, it was the same situation. Supposedly now the girls have said I guess they have received all their monies, supposedly. Because I think when the last time I heard one of the girls speak, it was still not clear as to where we were. But also that the girls have decided that they'll not be some girls will not be available in this window, not all the girls, right? And so you can see we're still at an impasse. And we have missed progress. And I think Minzy was sort of challenging him, Dennis, about some of this. And I think from where I sit, actually, I've always said this. The JFF have not acted like leaders and grown-ups. I mean, the word grown-ups may seem a little bit derogatory, but when you're a grown-up, you take the higher road a lot of times, or you find solutions to your problem, right? If you're an adult in the room, you have to operate accordingly, especially when you don't have to be older to be the adult, but if you're older, you're more seasoned, you're supposedly the leaders, you have to function in capacity to come to a good place. Now, sometimes you have to make a hard stand and a tough stance because it's required, but it has to be an effective stance. And I haven't seen where that has taken place with the girls and the JFF, right? It's interesting that when we talk about the coach, and I think Minzy sort of alluded to this, and I put my own perspective on this, that Donaldson, even though I knew Donaldson was going to get fired, just given what happened with the board member when they were trying to travel and one of the board members being kicked off the bus. But Donaldson was the most effective coach in Jamaica footballing history. I can say that unequivocally. He was, because if we didn't give Simonis a lot of kudos for taking the boys team in '98 to 1 World Cup, if the World Cup is the barometer, the benchmark, what you're trying to achieve for any footballing country, and you have one coach take you to 2 of those, qualified you both, went there. Not only that, went to the last 16 of the World Cup, then you have to be deemed to be the most successful coach in Jamaica footballing history. And to get fired just subsequent to that accomplishment says you weren't fired based on performance. Well, let's refresh. Let's take a step back. Because when we told that he wasn't fired, his contract was not renewed. So if your contract was not renewed and you have accomplished as much as any coach in that country's history, more than any coach in the Caribbean, maybe even this part of the world, actually, if you think about it, in North America, because I know Mexico has gone to the last 16 of World Cup. I know the U.S. women's team have 1 World Cup, so you can't say the best, frankly. If you win the World Cup, that's as good as it gets. But at least for the Caribbean, it's been the best. If you think about World Cup, Haiti has been to World Cup in '74. Trinidad went to the World Cup at turn of the century. But in terms of going to 2 back-to-back World Cups and getting to the last 16, and then you get fired, obviously it's not for footballing reason, it's for other reasons. What those reasons are, and I'm not sure the JFF has not been transparent about what that entailed, but they have made their decisions, right? Even though people would say they have gotten to the World Cup despite the JFF, not because of the JFF, which is really interesting. But then it seemed to be indicating that the girls have been paid and that the girls are not making themselves available. And so what we would love to hear for the girls is for the girls to, whatever forum they want to utilize to discuss this, come on and talk about where we are and to either confirm or deny Dennis's perspective, which is they have not, I'm going to put it in my own terms, accepted the call up for this window, and that the money situation is now being sort of resolved. I think there is some overpayment made, and I guess they're going to follow up on it. But at least from the point of the girls getting paid, that they have gotten paid. We want to make sure they've gotten paid, they've got all the monies due to them, and that they're the ones who have decided to withhold their services from the country. I think that's important for us to hear the other side to the story, because right now we only have one side to the story. And we would love to get more clarity on this, because it's never we have seen the JFF and the girls on this path of no return, it appears, and we have no idea when it's going to get resolved. And I think they've up speed. I heard Rudolph mention that there'll be 2 friendlies coming up in February. I think he says against Chile, and some of the girls will be traveling. But I would say this, which is, I have a view. This is my own personal view. This is my belief. So this is not rumors. It's my belief that the JFF would love to not deal with those girls who went to the World Cup. Now, I think they're saying that some of the girls who are probably in college will be part of these friendlies. They would love to not deal with the girls, especially the ones who may be more challenging, or some of the more senior girls. I'm sure they would love not to deal with them anymore, and to get new girls who they can have better control over, be part of the national program. And I'm sure they will bring in some of the girls who have played in the qualifiers, which they were successful for the Gold Cup, and have those girls be part of the national program, and somehow weed out, that's just my belief, some of the girls who went to the World Cup. Because I think that's how some of those individuals operate. One could call it vindictiveness. I won't say it in that way, but I would say I get the sense that some of the JFA would be happy if some of those girls retire from the national program, no matter how good they are, actually, because they probably believe that everybody's replaceable. And that is true. The question is, what's the quality that will replace those players? So it's very disappointing that we are at this impasse, what I call a never-ending impasse. And it doesn't seem like there's any end in sight for this. And that should not be the case. Extremely disappointing. So when I hear your perspective on this, I've done my little half-hour soliloquy on this. I think that, when Dennis comes on and talk, and I got grief, somebody who's close to me gave me grief about my interview with Dennis. They're like, you spoke to Dennis for about 9 hours, and they walk away saying they learned nothing from that discussion. So it's a waste of 9 hours. And in hindsight, it probably was true, because we had no resolution. Whatever we talked about didn't get us to a good place. So it sort of probably was a little bit of a waste of time, frankly, which is extremely disappointing. And you'd hope going forward, when you have some of those interviews, the interviewer, which is yours truly, would do a better job of getting to some of the destination quicker. And the interviewees will be more transparent in terms of what information they communicate and the timing of such communication. So Trey Moon is saying the JFF should not recall them. New program and a fresh start for the Reggae Girls. Too much toxicity that YouTubers don't want to talk about for whatever reason. Trey Moon, I think on this program, because I've talked about these things quite a bit, we have provided both sides to this, right? Both sides. It hasn't been one dimensional where we're saying the JF is solely to blame. I call out some of the leaders of the girls' team, what they said, what they didn't say, how they operated, whether they're being economical with the truth or whether they're being truthful. So I don't think anyone here has not called out the girls. But Trey Moon, if you're going to be fair, so what's your view, Trey Moon, on the JFF? You think that they've been great? Have they been great leaders? Have they been fair to the girls? Have they been transparent? What's your view? I would love to get it, to see where you truly sit in this whole equation. And we say we want a fresh start for the reggae girls. Quality players don't grow on tree, Trey Moon. You can have a fresh start. You can bring in a whole new team. We see what happened, right? Fans don't want losers. So I'm not calling the replacement girls losers, but they didn't qualify for the Gold Cup. The World Cup team would have qualified for the Gold Cup. We don't want to be on the sideline watching games because we don't have a strong enough team. That's not good enough. But Trey, think about this, Trey, which is, do you want to be supporting a team which is not a good team? I don't see too many Jamaicans supporting Bournemouth or Sheffield or supporting Crystal Palace or supporting Luton, even though there's a Jamaican in Luton. Some people may like the team. People support winners. We want to be affiliated with winners. That's what you want. Now, so we may call you bandwagonists, but we want winners. We just don't want people who are just going to play and we can say what they're playing. That's not the objective. The S-Technic saying, Kranky, the JFF removed the suspension of girls so they weren't ready for what should they do. And S-Technic, I'm not saying, if that's the case, S-Technic, then I would love to hear their side. Because if the perspective is this, that one, the monies have been paid, right? And two, and here's the thing, what we haven't heard about. So the monies have been paid and the girls are making themselves available. Are they withholding their services because their grievances have not been addressed? And if so, what are those grievances? I refuse to not try to get both sides of the story to allow me then to make an informed decision about some of these things, right? Because it's unfair. I can only call it like I see it and what's in the public domain. So if the girls are withholding their services, the question is why? And yes, Trey Moon, if they withhold their services and they have no good reason for doing so because they're in their feelings, quote unquote, then you have to replace them. You can't sit and wait for them because everybody is replaceable. You just want to replace people with inferior quality. Now, inferior may sound harsh. If it's not the same quality or better, then you should try not to replace those individuals unless they're toxic, right? And as you're sort of alluding to, Trey Moon, there are some aspects of the girl in terms of what has transpired, it's been toxic. And you guys heard me, sir, before when I was debating Tiga, a debate which he said he won. If that's how you win, boy, I don't want to be that way. But the fact that I thought the girls lost more than the JFF because there'll be no Gold Cup for the women's football, lost a lot with this impasse and this debacle and this confrontation and this conflict between the JFF and the girls. I truly believe that. Because the men's team are doing well. They're going to be playing two of the most prestigious tournaments that we have in this part of the world in the next month and a half to 3 months. And by the way, I just bought my plane ticket. I must say, I just have to should have bought it earlier. So one thing I have missing now is my rent-a-car. I may not even get one. I may just take a cab from my hotel to the game. But I'm looking forward to the Nations League game coming up next month. And what I say about the game is this. One thing I love about us Jamaicans, actually, it's amazing how overconfident we are. Let me repeat. It's amazing how overconfident we are. If you ask a Jamaican if we're going to win the Nations League, there is no doubt in their mind. Now, some people say, Kranky, You don't have no fiat. You don't have no confidence. But I always look at the quality of the opponent and say, you know what? It's going to be a difficult game. In their minds, it's not even difficult. They're going to win. They're going to win 3-4. Right? You just sitting there thinking, is that a rational way of thinking? Have some caution in your thought process about how you think you're going to do. But just don't say, you're definitely going to win. You can't lose. There's no such thing. And we haven't won any of these tournaments to even have that such confidence. Should we be confident? Yes, the team has done well. We keep refreshing the team slowly but surely. The team improving, but I don't see where it is that we should be overconfident in winning. But I'm going to watch the game because I want us to win. I want to make sure I'm supporting the team. And I really hope the team does well. Really hope the team does well. And if we don't do well, play some good football. I would hate to go to the game, we get battered. That's just not digestible. So I hope we play some good football. Tremon is saying the JFF has always been known as non-performing, incompetent, and slow to pay and embroiled in issues. We've come to accept that's how the JFF is, and we work with it. It's not right, but it's what it is. Tremon, that's a really interesting perspective, actually. That one is forced to accept mediocrity. It's really interesting. I can't deny with anything that you say, right? Because FIFA is a monopoly, and FIFA only seems to be focused on making sure each of their associate, so the countries that are part of the organization, are operating. I don't think they care about fair elections or any of that. Trying to make sure they check the box to say, yeah, they have a constitution, they're operating, they send them money to support their program. That's it. I don't see where they're spending time making sure the process is transparent, open, the electoral process is well situated, people who are involved in football get to vote. The vote is dispersed enough so that, no one can manipulate the voting process. I don't see none of that. What I see is mainly around, if you interfere, then we're going to ban the country and scare people so they all acquiesce to them, which I find to be ridiculous. So don't disagree with your perspective here about the JFF, but it has to be that we do better, right? We have to do better. We have to do better. Mediocrity is just, we have too much people with quality and different skill sets and quality skill sets to be settling for mediocrity. That just can't be right. Trey saying, Trey, I have a lot of comments tonight, Trey. However, what the Reggae Girls did was unforgivable, irrespective of the circumstances. They accepted the call up. They would have been in Jamaica and could have had an in-person talk. Trey, I can't fully agree with that. I do agree there are different ways to resolve conflict and disagreements. But one way is not to accept the call. I would agree with you, though, and I've debated on this, which is I think they lost more from boycotting than they would have gained, right? And I think if they were going to boycott, I've said this before, it's a boycott as close to the game as possible to get the outcome, where the JFF had no replacements and then would be penalized by CONCACAF and or FIFA versus how they do it. You have to put yourself in a position to win. You can't do something where you're just going to waste a lose-lose for you. It's probably a lose-win for the JFF. They got their way, but they didn't get the resources that's going to be available at the Gold Cup, while the girls gained nothing, individually or collectively. To me, nothing. If the girls can articulate to me what they have gained from any of this process, or anyone can do so, I would love to hear it. To me, the girls got zero from this whole process. Nothing. The money they got was due to them, if they did get the money, because Dennis said they did, but I'm not sure they did. We'll have to hear from the girls themselves. But apart from that, they're not playing in these. Who cares about friendlies anyway? Who wants to fly from England to go to South America for a friendly, that long distance? Doesn't do anything. Gold Cup, whole different ball game. World eyes are on your game. A lot of television coverage. You could get sponsorship deal out of it. You're one of the girls. You do well. You get the acclaim. You get the accolades. You get the laudatory comments. Right now, you get nothing, basically. So, yeah. Trey saying that money owing or misunderstanding would have been easily sorted out. Yeah, I actually, Trey, don't think they struck over money. That's my view. I don't think it was a money thing. I think the strike was about both parties wanting their way, both parties being stubborn, the girls being hurt about how they were treated, quote unquote, whatever that entails, about Damas's firing. It probably had nothing. I don't think it had anything to do with the money per se. That may sound strange. You don't strike for money unless somebody said they're not going to pay you, right? JFF didn't say they're going to pay them. Did they strike because they didn't get paid? They'd have worked that out. They'd have said, look, you got to pay us. They'd probably talk to FIFA. They'd have gotten their money. It wasn't the money. It was, I'm in my feelings. I can't deal with you. You're not acquiescing or you're not agreeing to my terms, my suggestion, the things I'm concerned about. You are not treating me fairly. You are not treating me with respect. So I don't want to engage with you. That's what I gather from all of this, not the money. So those who may think it's a money situation, I don't think so. Trey, have a lot of comments say, but we know that the girls not accepting the call up because of the money owing issue. The tube, yeah, I agree with that. Okay, yep, thanks for that, Trey. We're on the same page, which is it was not a money situation. It was more of around whatever other issues are out there. I know there was some issue about masseuse. I know there were issues about knowing who the next coach was. Some things I don't think should in any situation preclude people can't get to the table and negotiating. None of those things I heard about. Do I know who the trainer is, or who's going to train me, or what time I'm going to train, or who the new coach is going to be? None of those things. Well, the coach situation may be different, but none of those things are items which are so egregious and so awful and so terrible and can't be resolved that would preclude you from saying not getting a call up. They're much bigger issues. Both parties, to me, this is what I believe, so this is not rumor, don't like each other, don't want to engage with each other. But they have to engage with each other, which makes it interesting. Now, the JFF doesn't have to engage those girls. They can get a new set of girls, but they're the FIFA representative. And I've said this before in the program, which is earlier this evening in talking about this, which is, or just a few minutes ago, which is, it should be that the adults in the room operate and act accordingly. And the JFF should be adults in the room and they have not acted accordingly, frankly. Trayman said, I'm working with what's in the media and I won't mention what I know because YouTubers don't want to talk about it. So let us hear about it. Trey Moon, we don't mind hearing about things. I'll have to qualify what you say to say this comes from Trey Moon. I don't want anyone to say that Kranky says this. But I'd love to hear is it what you think you know, or what you know, I shouldn't say think you know, and what's out there. Look, it's very obvious to me that the contentious nature between the two parties is not going to get us to a good place. And it is really sad, actually. It's truly sad. There has to be a better way in which people resolve conflict. And it can't be if it's not my way, it's the highway, which is what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, what seems to be the case. That needs to change. And don't know how you change it, because it doesn't seem that there's nothing on either side which suggests they want to resolve this amicably. Nothing. It appears that both sides are going to stand their ground. Like, if it's true that the girls are withholding their services, but how long do you plan to withhold your services? And here this girls, unless you have decided you don't want to play for the national team anymore, that may end up being the case, especially the ones who are on the fringes. They call in new girls, they're playing well, you're not getting, and they control the coach, right? You're not getting called back again. So the better players who are in stronger position may still get a call up, but I'm sure the pressure will be on them, on the JFF, to bring in the best players when we have certain tournaments. But you think about it. If you're on the fringe and you want to stay on the fringe, you may stay on the fringe permanently. Can't see you get into the team. And that's going to happen to some players anyway. Some players on the fringe who are at the World Cup will not, whether it's of their own volition or they're forced out, and I use the term forced out, or they just start calling, they will not be in the team going forward. I think this team will change materially going forward. Trey saying, what I believe, though, is that when the dust settles, we see only a few of the World Cup 23 girls make a return to the team. The vast majority won't be cook-off. Somehow, Trey, you look like people think I'm reading what you're saying, and I'm not. I'm speaking first and reading what you're saying. And you and I are aligned, actually. I think Shaw will still be there. I think it's going to be hard to get rid of Shaw or the Spences. But I think a number of players won't make it. But I think, if the representative for the girls is Shaw and Spence. So I shouldn't basically say Shaw will definitely be there, because if they find someone who can replace her and with similar quality, she won't be in the team. I don't think she will be, no matter how much they're going to call for her. There'll be some contentious issue created to preclude her from being in the team, actually. So I get the sense, hearing Dennis way back when we had the girls were going to Central America to play, I think they were going to play Honduras. I got the sense that they were hoping against hope these girls would qualify them. And they would then be in the driver's seat to say, you know what? We're only going to bring back who we want to bring back. And those of you who are creating, because those girls would have qualified, they may have said, you know what? We can only use the girls who qualified. It's only fair that we use them. I can just anticipate and prognosticate how that would have been, which is, we're only going to use those girls who got us to the Gold Cup because they made it available. You didn't make yourself available. Why should we use you? Yeah. Dwight is saying the girls are going through generational change. Yeah, and every team goes through that sooner or later. It's sort of similar set of girls who went to both World Cup, but there's still players there who have a lot of mileage left, right? If you think about the Spences and Bunny, Camerons of the world, they still have another 4 years of top level football to play. Because nowadays people take care of their bodies, right? It's not like in the old days where people drink too much and they don't exercise as much, they don't eat right, don't diet well. It's a changed environment. More and more players are playing later and later. So, yeah. Bless up, Mr. United. Thanks for joining. So, United, you're late, man. It's 9:17. How come you're so late? Or were you someplace else? Dwight says, do you ever want girls that can control financially? I don't think it's really financially, Dwight. I think they just want to be controlling. Because my understanding that the men's team haven't gotten all their money either. People think the men's team have gotten all their money when they play games. Some of them haven't gotten all their money. They just don't make it a problem, because a number of them don't need the money, even though they should get paid their money. And the ones who need the money are probably, would better be able to use the money. They probably don't have enough authority to enable them to create, challenges for the JFF. So they're in a good place. But yeah, I think they want to control them, period, not just financially. I don't think it's just financial. I think they want to control them, period, because I think if you're the authority, it's like the Football Federation for the England team or the US Football Federation. You don't want the players to control how you operate. You have to be the adults in the room. You have to control it. Having said that, though, you have to respect what I would call the product. The players are the product. The players are who we go to watch. The players are the ones who are on the field sacrificing, I won't say blood, but sweat and tears, time and effort, put themselves in harm's way, and may get injured and destroy their career because the JFF can't afford to pay them if they're hurt. And some of them will have insurance, but some may not. And they're the ones who want to make sure they're playing for the country and play well. So they're the most important parties. It's not the JFF, it's the players. So you want to treat them with respect and make sure they have the environment and the facilities to enable them to maximize their ability and produce the best product on the field. That's an imperative, that's important, and that should be the case. Excuse me. And sometimes the JFF doesn't put them in the best position to win, frankly. That would not be the case. So I would think that we won't have, I'm going to predict that this probably won't get resolved until 2025, frankly. The way they're going, there seems to be no desire on either party's part to resolve this in a manner where we can say this is settled. So Z saying, what happens to the money they do not pay to the players? Give me a second, Z. I need some water. AZ. Well, the JFF has always said they have had money challenges, right? Even though when you hear Dennis speak, you would draw the wrong conclusion. He keeps talking about a surplus. And I've mentioned before earlier in this program, we got to be careful with that word surplus and what it entails, because he may not be received by the audience in the right way. But my understanding is that they assume a lot of debt from the previous administration. It's been going on for a while. They haven't paid down the debt, which has restricted their ability to do a bunch of things, including paying off players for match fees and games and whatever it entails. Right? So until a lot of those debts are paid up, or they're on schedule with the debt, I assume that they're not on schedule with their payments, because you can still have debt to pay and be able to satisfy all your obligation because you have paid up the debt and the debts are paid on time. I'm sure that's probably part of the challenge they're facing, which is to make sure they pay the debt on time. They haven't been able to do so. So the hope would be that they get Chung seemed to allude to the fact that they have I think what he says, I don't want to misquote him, so I'll paraphrase him. They've signed maybe the biggest sporting deal in the Caribbean, sponsorship deal in the Caribbean history, supposedly, if I'm not mistaken. So I may be misquoting him. And I want to know what that number is. I'd probably say, whatever number they come up with, I'm sure Jack Warner had bigger numbers, whether they deem sponsorship deal or what they are. But I'm sure Jack Warner probably had bigger numbers. That's Trinidad couldn't build all those stadiums they've done. So whatever number Dennis think he come up with in the Caribbean, go check Warner's history. You may see much more money coming in through interesting means, I would say, actually. But he seemed to think they've signed a very lucrative deal. I assume it's the Adidas deal. And that deal will allow them to satisfy a lot of their obligation and allow them to be in a better fiscal place than they have in the past. And yeah, Dwight, and Dennis hasn't shied away from the fact that a lot of things they need to improve upon, whether it's their website, whether it's their sponsorship deals, but that is a work in progress. My only concern, and he's saying, you love to use the word perfect. Nothing is perfect. Why don't we just try to make it adequate, Dennis? We won't even go to the word perfect, because very few things in life are perfect or optimal. I'm just trying to make things adequate. We're not even asking for good or very good or best in terms of comparative. We just want it to be okay. Because right now, we're not even at the stage of deemed to be average, frankly. Until we get there, you're going to have monetary challenges and monetary problems. So we got to figure out a way to, and look, I think fan attendance at games, I think sponsorship deals, doing well in tournaments, we get paid fees. The higher you go up the FIFA ranking, the more appearance money you get. That's great also. All those things will help in helping to generate more revenues and be able to do more as an organization. I heard Dennis talking about starting tier 2 for women. I think he was questioning on, you don't even have tier 1, right? So you're going to get to tier 2. And his view is basically saying, which is, well, you can't wait for one to do the other. But we'd like for you to start first, and we can see how you're progressing. We're trying to undertake too many things, and you can't get anything done right? And he's also talking about the academy they're going to start, trying to find elite footballers. By the way, this is not the JFF's initiative. This is a FIFA initiative, which they're doing across the globe, trying to help different countries identify exceptional, unique talent, having academies for all these associations, have them identify elites or unique talents in the country and put them in an environment where they can maximize their potential. So even though the JFF is going to be doing this, it's not a JFF instituted or JFF idea to do this. This is a FIFA thing that they're doing across the globe. And hopefully we're going to be benefiting from this. So the JFF will be doing that. So you may see and hopefully you'll see more kids coming through who can perform more on a global stage at the global level than we have today. We have a few between the Whispers of the world, the Beatties of the world, the Nicholsons of the world. But I think, given how athletic we are as a people and what we've accomplished by the athletics mode, that we probably should be doing better as a country to the number of players who we can develop to play at the highest level. And we have to do that on different levels, right? But the coaching has to improve, facilities have to improve, which I think will allow us to develop better players. So Dwight is saying, really, the way to make money is by hosting matches and sold out stadium. We sold a stadium with 30,000 fans. The JFF should stay away from trying to run any league domestically. Leave that to a private organization. Well, no, I think if there's no private organization to assume running of the women's football, then the JFF has to do something, right? We can't, if there's no organization that has the resources and the manpower, or I should say people power, to run, and the skill set need to run, say, a women's league, the JFF has to assume that responsibility or delegate it to some organization that they can put in place to do so. So I think that needs to be done. But I don't disagree with trying to have sold out stadiums. So maybe people who live in Jamaica can explain to me why people are not watching games, right? Why are people not watching games? Why are they not going to the national stadium? Because you hear Manny's man say this, and I was checking up my numbers the other day. So I don't want to necessarily talk about the cost I'm incurring to go to these Nations League games, but it is much, much cheaper to go to a game in Jamaica than to go to a game in the US, unless the game is being played in my backyard. So when you think about airfare, when you think about hotel fees or Airbnb fees, when you think about ticket price, you got to think about rent a car. And you think about meals. It's expensive in the US. If you're in New York, where I am, to go to Texas or go to Vegas or wherever it is the game is being played, it's expensive to go to a game. You know, the tickets here that I saw with the Jamaica section for the Nations League is $200 to over $200 for a ticket. Just for one of the games, actually. So if you go to two games, which are 4 days apart, that's $400+. And if you buy them late, it's more than that. And then add on airfare, and it's expensive. So even though in Jamaica, we know people have similar salaries and compensation, but if you were to do it just based on comparative, if you live in Kingston, it's not going to cost you more than let me use Jamaican dollars, more than $3,000 to go to a game. I don't think, actually. Is it 3,000? Sometimes I get my numbers all mixed up. Or 30,000, whatever the number is. So I'm use US dollars because I struggle with Jamaican dollars, actually. It just sounds so huge. It's not going to cost you more than $20 US to go to a game, which I know some people may not be able to afford, but it's not as prohibitive as here trying to get to a game. So I do think even if people don't love the football, but they want to support the country, they should try to get to the games. And the JFF should make it a vibes in the stadium, a vibes in the game, to make people want to attend. Bless up, Minzy. Good job tonight. I saw you had a difficult conversation with Dennis. I was jumping at to ask him a few questions because I was getting perturbed with some of his answers, frankly, and him talking about rumor and gossip and all sort of nonsense, frankly. But anyway, but good job trying to pull him out, and it was a little bit contentious, which I love, by the way. And I criticized myself by saying my discussion with Dennis didn't get contentious, which in hindsight, it should have been, given the nature of the conversation. But it was good that it was a little bit contentious, and he was taken aback by some of the pushback or question. That's how it should be. This is not meant to be, it's not meant to make the conversation difficult, but also the tough questions have to be asked. So people are going to say you dropped the ball, but people don't understand, Mincy. Until they're in your seat, they don't get it. When I'm in those forums and trying to ask questions, I'm not trying to be made uncomfortable for the interviewee, but I'm trying to get out his information and transparency so that we can be better informed about situation, get the facts out. It's not trying to make your guests uncomfortable. Why would they want to come back and make them uncomfortable, right? It's trying to garner and pull out information. Sometimes it's tough, especially the person is an astute and a well-informed interviewee. It makes it difficult, right? And especially if they're in a position where they don't have to be transparent, it makes it difficult. But I think sometimes the conversation has to be uncomfortable to get to where you're trying to get to, right? He was pushing back on rumor and gossip nonsense. If I say I believe something, it can't be rumor or gossip. It is what it is. Or if I say I have half the information, here are the facts that I have, I don't know the other half, you can't say, well, it's gossip, right? That makes no sense. So interesting conversation. He's saying that the girls got paid, Minzy. So Minzy, you need to try to get one of those girls to come on, or one of the leaders, to see if the girls have truly been paid. But that's interesting. Have the girls truly being paid, or are we being given a story just to make the conversation easy, frankly? But it's unfortunate that we are where we are with the girls, and that we can't get those situations resolved, and that we can't be in a place where because here's what's really sad about this. It's really sad, if you think about it. And it's sad for the girls too. I can imagine they probably feel really disrespected. So even though I believe that both parties are to blame for this impasse and where we are, if you have gone on and played for your country, you've done really well. You expect to come back being lauded, treated like as females, like a princess and princesses, being given the keys to Kingston, being given a little bit of parade. You break the line. That's what you probably expect, right? You expect to be given all the accolades you deserve for your performance. And you come back to misery, basically. And you'd expect the JFF to say, which they have said, we appreciate the girls, what they do, but it seems like it's more words than anything else. So that's really disappointing. Because if I go out and I think I've done really well, I know I've done well. The outcome shows that I've done well. But yet, I come home feeling disenchanted and feeling like I've been used and disrespected. It must be a really bad feeling. So I'm not sure both parties have put themselves in each other's shoes to say how they would feel. It's extremely disappointing. So Minzy is saying, so it's for them to come. I thought they would come. Minzy, as we have always said, there's three sides to the story. And I've said earlier, there must be something that's precluding the girls from coming. Gunner's boss, I disagree with that, actually. I don't think the women's team, well, two things on that Gunner's boss. One is the women's team is getting equal pay as the men's team. So they have influence. And they have a history to demonstrate why that should be the case. Even though the men's team, on a regular basis, even though the women's have won the World Cup, women's team, the men generate more revenues than they do. And secondly, the women's team underachieved for the U.S. Other than win the World Cup for the U.S. women's team is underachievement. If they don't win, and you know how the U.S. is, forget about everything else, because the U.S. think they're best in everything, even though they're not, obviously. But for the U.S., if you have been winning the World Cup as a women's team, and you haven't won the World Cup, you have failed. So they shouldn't be expected to be put on, have coronation for them, given that they haven't won. The Jamaica women's team is a different story. They've achieved something which is monumental. And it's not as if we got there because we're in a weak zone. We got there from a difficult zone. A very difficult zone. No one expects us to be ahead of Brazil and France, right? To qualify for that group. And we did. So at the end of the day, they achieved something monumental and they walk away feeling dissatisfied. So Tuffy says, Kranky, do you believe all 24 girls declined the call? I found it's hard to believe. No, my understanding is that, and Minzy, you can correct me on this, because I didn't listen to all of the program that you had. I listened to some of it. is that some of the girls who, like in college, for example, were part of the workup squad, are available for these friendlies. I mean, you can correct me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but I thought that was it. My assumption would be some of the more seasoned girls, the Swaby sisters, the Spences, the Shaws, would be the ones not turning up. I think some of the younger ones may, but I think some of the more seasoned ones probably will not, because that conflict is not going anywhere. So Mr. Manning's man is saying, I don't think any money is outstanding. I think the Federation should have called the ladies, make it public. They would say they turn up. Yeah, Manning's, it's just, I just think it's unacceptable that we are where we are. It's just unacceptable. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's unacceptable. Why would... So they've had their fight. They've had their money fight. Dennis seemed to have mentioned that the other issues were insignificant. I'm going to use my own term, but I garner from him. There weren't material issues that need to be resolved outside the money. So the money is resolved while we are where we are. There are other problems. There are other issues. Know Your Service and Kranky, don't you think that the JFF should implement a digital payroll nature platform to organize and automate payments? I'm not sure. Well, it depends. I don't know how they pay their staff now, right? But regardless of what method they utilize, and it's not a payroll per se. These are contractual arrangements. So it's not a payroll. They have to move money to the girls some way, shape, or form. They're moving into the traditional banking system. And the money they were moving is not an automated process whereby I know every week or every month I'm going to pay you. So I can set up a program to allow that to happen. They have to do one-off manual calculations to then determine, because sometimes it's a little bit unwieldy process. Because the calculations entail a number of different things. There are bonuses, there are a number of games that you played, what games you played in. So there are more bespoke type calculations had to be done. It wasn't a very uniform thing. Some things may be uniform, like the bonus, but other items may not be uniform to be done. So you had to do it a little bit differently. So I would view that was one of the reasons why the calculations had to be done the way they are done. And then what you have to do is then make sure you have everyone on the list, the money's available, and then instruct the bank to move the money to their accounts. I have no idea why this was so convoluted, why it took so long to confirm the payments, why the JFF and the girls didn't have much better. Well, I know why. They don't like each other. That's my view. So it's my belief. It's not rumor. It's my belief. They don't like each other, so they didn't want to communicate with each other. They only communicate because they had to, not because they wanted to. So, Triple E says, Kranky, do you believe the fans and the country should be accountable as well as how we celebrate the work of achievement? Yeah, I would think, here's what's strange about this, Triple E. The conflict was such that it left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. So assume that if you're a minister of sport in Jamaica and you're Babsy Grange, and you're here in a public forum that people get to the World Cup via GoFundMe, and you know you provided some of the resources to get them there. And I know that conversations were held with them, with the girls from the, at least this is not rumor, this is what was said in the public domain. So you can take it the way you want to, with the government, with the girls, and engagement about what are we saying here? You guys got money from us. So I'm sure there was some distaste left in the mouths of officials and everybody. The girls were not happy. The JFF not happy. The Ministry of Sport may not be happy. No one is happy. And the fans are caught in the middle. The fans are the ones that get caught in the middle. So yeah, I don't disagree that something should have been done, but it just seemed like it wasn't the time to do so, just given all that transpired. So it's really interesting actually that you go away. It's like, you know what it reminds me of? This seems like an extreme example, so maybe I shouldn't use it. But it's like going off to Vietnam to fight and come back to the US and people despise you. It's like, what's happening here? It wasn't the fans per se, so the analogy may not align really well. It was more of the JFF, but it's a similar construct, which is you go away to do battle, you come back, you've done really well, even though you couldn't say people have done well in Vietnam, and you realize that you're not appreciated. So that's part of the issue, actually. No, you started saying Chung doesn't seem to have simple system in place for the federation, even though he is bragging about mega deals and surplus of monies, and they're thinking of innovative ways to improve the admin. Yeah, Chung talks well. I'm not sure the words and the verbiage matches up to reality. I don't know. This is my speculation. I'm not sure if you align what's said to what has been accomplished, if there's a one-for-one alignment. I think there's some things one could challenge. But again, we don't have the transparency. And Dennis, here's a question for you, Dennis. When will the financials for 2023 be published? Because we publish our financials like a year late when they're useless and meaningless. So when will the financials for 2023 be published? When are they going to be on the website? Because nowadays, in today's environment, give automation that people are alluding to in the chat and give technology, it shouldn't take forever to have those audited and be published. Or you could publish interim one with qualifications as to why people should accept them as such until they get audited. But that's not major. So in essence, if you want transparency, then let us see what those financials look like without having to take your word for it. Or let us get audited ones in a reasonable time period and waiting a year to get them when they're meaningless. Jason saying 2025. They gotta say, Kranky, I'm not an accountant, and I could create an Excel spreadsheet with formulas, so even the girls could input and see what they're entitled to. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you, Miguel. Suppose the girl it's probably gonna be hard for the girls because what independent calculation do they have to inform them about what they should be due, right? JFF could send them anything. If they send them $1 million and says each girl gets 10% of the million, is that JFF calculation? Is that JFF percentage? Is that FIFA percentage? How does that work? Right? If FIFA say each girl should get 30,000, and then you have, Australia take out the taxes and Jamaica take out the taxes, whatever, who takes out what should the end number be? I don't know how they get to a good place, frankly. I would guess that they just have to check what's provided to them, and they may compare notes about who get what. All right, but I'm not sure there's going to be that transparency you're looking for to say how much do I get net? It's not what I get gross, How much I get net, and then if you're in the U.S., you got to file U.S. tax return, because unlike a lot of other countries, no matter where you live in the world, if you're a U.S. citizen, you have to pay U.S. taxes. Now, if the government has a treaty with another country, you get some credit for taxes you pay in that country that you maybe also be paying taxes in. But it's not like the UK, for example. So if you're a UK resident, you're domiciled out of the country for a number of years, like in Hong Kong. And in the UK, I think if you make over 150, you pay 45% tax. And in Hong Kong, they pay 15% flat tax. At least I knew that's what it was then. So there's a big differential between the two. So after a while, if you're a UK resident, you live in Hong Kong, you don't have to pay that 45% after going over a certain number, you pay the 15%. That's not how the US is. In the US, in most times, you're going to pay federal and state tax. Some states like Nevada and Florida don't charge taxes, but you're going to pay at least federal tax. And the highest federal rate is about 37%. So you can't hide from that tax. So even when you get credit, you may still have to pay taxes. Something which I experienced when I went overseas, actually, to live for a while. So those players who are from the US will have to pay US tax on that money, in addition to any tax they may pay for any other jurisdiction in which they reside. So really interesting. And I'm sure they need to make sure they get the right monies so that they can give it to their tax accountant to file their tax return. So, but we keep going around the circle as it relates to the girls in the situation. Know yourself saying, how are you managing mega deals but can't pay your players? And you can hire quality people to hone as a big brand. Well, know yourself. Here's the thing, though. So the mega deals being alluded to are in the more recent times, right? So say, for example, last year, they were having difficulties paying their bills because they weren't generating enough revenues. But now that they're going to Copa America, now they're going to Nations League semifinal and maybe final. Now Adidas is probably giving them a renewed contract with better terms. There's monies coming in from at least 3 sources there. And not what we call in Jamaica monkey money, real money. That quote unquote real money will allow you to pay down some of your obligations. So the coach make a decent chunk of change. Actually, the players have back pay. They have debt that they've incurred over the years, which they need to pay down. They have debt they're going to incur to move the players between all the different destinations and places they're going to play. They're getting much more monies, and this is not even including other monies they may get from friends they may have that will allow them to pay up their debt. So yes, they can struggle now, but I think if you look ahead prospectively, you can see they're going to be in a much better financial situation. And I think that's why it's important for us to have more insight into what that money is entail, because people have concern about how the money is being utilized, how the money is being spent. And I want to be able to say, Kranky is questioning people's integrity. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying you got to have more transparency when there's money involved, because as we know, money is something which make people make bad decisions. So it would, one would love to know what those monies are and how those monies are being spent. And we're supposed to garner that from the financial statements, but those financial statements are always late and useless by the time you get them, because they're saying, well, they need to be audited. And by the time that audit is done, it doesn't really tell you anything. You get some financial statement with some notes that tell you some things. You don't really get much out of it, actually. And frankly, they're useless because by the time they're published, you have moved on. You get new sponsorship, you get new monies, you incur new expenses. They basically are useless, frankly. So yeah, know yourself is saying, let me get a great point. I don't think they are thinking that like that. Silent Kranky is right. No, they're getting paid. That's why they're not even concerned about the girls not making the Gold Cup. I'm telling you. Even though they're losing money from the Gold Cup with the girls, I'm sure they're not losing sleep at night, because I'm sure Copa America is very lucrative. Very lucrative. And I'm sure Nations League, if you're in the semifinal, is going to provide a decent amount of money. So yes, they're not they're probably sitting there thinking, we have to win this election because things are looking on the up and up. But then, as I've always said, it's the same people running for the election. It's just different persons, but they're all from the same organization. So that doesn't make a difference. Mr. Flex saying, poor money management, that's what's smashing up the JFF. Well, excuse me. Give me 1 second. Let me drink some water again. When you talk for a long time, your mouth get dry. My understanding is that Chum is a CPA by trade, and is a finance expert, along with Speed, who's also a chartered accountant by trade. So they should be they should have expertise in money management. They should manage the resources of the organization. So it is disappointing. It is disappointing, frankly, if we're having money management problems, given the vocation of those two individuals, which is part of what they do for a living. You would expect that those two be good money managers, and therefore, whatever financial challenge JFF has, they would work to get them out and put them in a place where, going forward, they've been a great place. So you would hope that that would be the case. But hey, who knows? Who knows why we are where we are and how we get here sometimes, because we don't have that transparency. I don't know, Speed used to mention around, I'm going to use my own term, the JFP being a sort of I wouldn't call it quasi-public, almost like a private organization, even though their constituent is public in a lot of cases. And I would say the constituent is us, the fans, and the players of the product. I got the sense from him that, you know what? We do what we do. We are deemed to be the parties responsible for the program. And therefore, we're not obligated to the public in terms of how we operate. I garner that from him. He may say, well, Kranky is misquoting me or not being correct in his perspective, but that's what I got from Speed when he was talking about these things in the past. So, and look, FIFA is not under the authority of any government. They are more of a private organization, not even public organization. They have affiliates and association that's part of their body, and they operate like a monopoly. So, and that's how the JFF operates. That's how the JFF operates. So, there's no way we as fans, even though we push and prod and shout, can, I wouldn't use the word force. Okay? You can't force them. I'm not sure we can be as influential as we'd like to be. Doesn't mean we should give up, but the influence we need to have may not be there, frankly. Brian, I was talking to myself. So I mute myself because I drink water. Sorry. My throat is getting dry. It's not seeming to get any better. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. But the Chung will tell you, Brian, that they inherited a really bad financial situation from the previous administration. So go back to Burrell days. And therefore, it required years to get out of that situation. Right? And no matter how good a financial planner you are, no matter the financial acumen you have, it's impossible to get the JFF in a really good place financially because they were just in such a bad situation. Am I still muted, guys? Because I see points here saying I'm muted. It's no longer muted. Am I still muted? Let me know. That's interesting. What happened? I don't know what happened. Am I still muted? Let me know if I'm still muted. Tyrone or Brian or Gunner's boss. You guys say I've gone silent. Am I still muted? Okay, so no, good. Sorry about that. Me getting a little bit senile, you put the mute on and then you forgot to take it off immediately. But they will tell you that the financial situation was so bad because you got to remember they had coaches who were making a lot of money who they fired, and they had no resource and income to pay them off. And they would also say the financial situation was exacerbated by COVID, which, as you know, most organizations across the footballing world, across the sports world, unless you were like in the NBA, for example, were challenged financially because they couldn't play or couldn't play as much, couldn't have attendance and all that. So therefore, they weren't able to generate the revenues that they needed to allow them to pay for the operating expenses. Because what happens most times is the expenses still keep on occurring. Because remember, we were playing World Cup qualifiers, but the source of the revenues that you normally have between sponsorship, gate receipts were not there. So that was probably part of their situation, which some is understandable and some is not actually. So one could say, yeah, we agree. COVID was a difficult time, materially affected a lot of people's financial situation, but you did really nothing to go out and proactively source revenues, right? Or try to participate in all these different activities when you should have cut back on it if you're financially prudent, because you couldn't afford to, right? There are different ways to address these things by prioritizing, by being proactive in terms of trying to generate revenues. They didn't really do in the way they should. And that would have exacerbated the problem that they incurred financially. So, but things are on the up and up, right? That's history. Going forward, I would be surprised if the JFF is not in the black come end of Copa America. You would think, and maybe people in the chat know this. I don't know what much money we get from Copa America or Nations League, but it's not chump change, frankly. It's decent amount of revenues. And also, even though Dennis didn't mention the amount from the Adidas deal, I'm sure that's going to be a decent penny also going forward. They probably get a certain percentage of each sale. So you'd expect to generate quite a bit of revenues from the two tournaments, along with Adidas, along with FIFA money. Kind of FIFA is going to be giving them money to set up an academy to create this elite program. So all the way around, the money's flowing in from all these sources. Now, you guys know when money flows in, organizations have issues. No matter what organization it is. Say if money is flowing in, we want accountability, and to make sure the money is spent for its intended purpose, spend wisely, spend prudently, right? Not just spend for spend's sake, and then you end up being the situation you were before. And also, you gotta have money for what they used to say in the old days for a rainy day. You can't just spend all you have and not have money in the coffers for times where you may need monies in emergency or difficult situations. So the hope will be that we see that level of fiscal responsibility and accountability, which is required for the program to function seamlessly, to function well, and for us not to have our ability to do things being restricted because of funding situations. What we should be focused on, actually, and I'm going to digress a little bit to say this. I was watching a program yesterday on YouTube, by the way, about El Salvador. And that, El Salvador was one of the murder capitals of the world. Not the country itself, right? Say capital. I think San Salvador is the capital. But El Salvador, the country, had I saw some stat. It was probably 80-something persons killed per 100,000. Some ridiculous number. And now that number is down to, don't quote me, but less than 20, whatever the number is, because they've taken some draconian measures. That's not the point I'm trying to bring up here, but I want to talk about that at some future point in time. They've had a library, a national library built by the Chinese, one of the best libraries probably in the world, actually, open 24 hours. But also, they're going to build a stadium for them. So when I heard stadium, my ears perked up, because we have talked about in this program that we need a new national stadium, or if not new, one that's refurbished to be like new. Now, what the program didn't tell me or didn't say was how is El Salvador compensating China for building the stadium? Because they don't have any money, right? Their economy was in the you-know-what because of the violence they have. Their economy is starting to improve because they have restricted the murder rate significantly, and they've done it a very draconian way. And one of these programs, I'm going to talk about that to see, does Jamaica affect some of these same methods to reduce the murder rate, to reduce crime? Or is it too draconian? But they're taking some draconian measures. But the point I'm trying to make is the stadium is being built by China, supposedly, a national stadium. And I would love to know how they're paying for it. I know they went to cryptocurrency as their currency. I'm not sure how that goes, because crypto is beating the toilet. Because they had a very young president. I think he's like 37 now, was 30, just over 30 when he came to power. But because we need a new stadium. Now, it won't be free, but it's their way to get a stadium that can be self-sustaining and can pay for itself over time. Maybe just like how we do for our toll roads, but that's an interesting one. But we need a new stadium. We need facilities to show that we are moving from being a developing country. We're progressing forward, and that our football team which is now playing with some of the better teams and ranked, sixth in this region, is being provided the facilities that it deserves. And also our women's team is provided facilities they deserve in their performance on the world stage. Notice I was saying we need a better media and marketing team. I was saying Jamaica has the number one selling national jersey, but we don't have a solid media and marketing team for the program. Well, no. If we have number one selling jersey, look, Adidas have their own machinery to sell these things, right? They have their own machinery, their own advertising campaign and media to do it. I think we need a media marketing team to promote the product so we can generate more sponsorship, right? Maybe Adidas can take on the whole marketing for the merchandise they prepare and they sell on our behalf and that we get a percentage from. But I think we need to, I think they should, because they're the ones doing it, provide to prepare and put in place individuals to market the product to generate more sponsorship. So Braun is saying, Kranky, it won't happen. We fight against a national ID system, but just to contemplate the measures El Salvador president took. Hey, Brando, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Drastic times call for drastic measures. That's what I'll say about that. Drastic times call for drastic measures. And the way El Salvador got there actually wasn't based on the status quo. Because and I haven't done it, I'm going to do more research on this, but the little I've realized from this is that this president wasn't part of the status quo, right? There are two competing parties. A lot of people run those parties went to jail. Those presidents went to jail for whatever reason, for long periods, sometimes for corruption otherwise. He came as a young person. I think he was mayor for one of those major cities, but wasn't affiliated with any party per se, which is an independent, which is what we need in Jamaica. We need it everywhere. We need it in the US, for example. An independent third party. That's why Trump does well here, by the way. Independent third party, not affiliated with any of the establishments, not in a situation where they have to, they have obligation to any of those established organizations and parties and people. So they can make independent decisions and do what's best for the country. And I do think Jamaica needs that. When I see poor people running around with green and orange, I just shake my head, stop. Stop. They're not helping you. They give you a few money to vote. You see somebody paying somebody to vote, and then they're not helping you. So stop doing that. But don't want to digress tonight because that's something I want to talk about in the future at some point. But yeah. Somebody say I should check my phone here. I got an email. I can't check it right now, but I'll look at it later about infrastructure in Jamaica. Well, let's hope they're building a stadium. I hope it's a stadium they're building. Okay, that's Devon. Devon, I see it, but it'll be interesting to see what that entails, actually. But we do need a stadium, and my hope is that not only a stadium, we need facilities and infrastructure to allow footballers, whatever age group they are, to have facilities that would allow them to maximize their potential. It can't be that they're playing on poor fields with poor bounce, and that doesn't help you. I was watching the Arsenal game today. I mentioned this at the outset of the program. I was really taking in the field and how beautiful the field was. Now, we all agree they have a litany of money to spend on those things, but we have to aspire for these things. And when you play on those surfaces, those nice field with the ball bounce through, it allows you then to not have bad habits. You can control the ball in a good way, not worried about the bounce, and helps you to get to a good place. So, yeah, it'd be a good thing. Now, Brandon say, I find it hard to believe it was number one selling jersey. The Argentinian and Colombian jerseys come to mind. Yeah, I don't know, actually. We should look up that, actually. If the number one selling jersey, so here's what we noted, Brandon. We can do a quick calculation. Now, a lot of people love Jamaica brand, right? And people, I don't think Jamaicans realize, they think they do, how other people value the Jamaica brand and are amazed that a country of 6 million people, I know you people like saying it's 3 million. I'm going to use my own calculations. 6 million people have such a powerful impact on the world in general, not just, the Caribbean. It's so well recognized. And it's not just sports. People think it's just sports. You look across the US, across a lot of different disciplines, whether it's law or medicine or business, there's so many people from the Caribbean, especially Jamaica, doing really, really well. And across the globe, in terms of what the Jamaica brand has provided to the world, it's something Jamaicans should be proud of. And it's a great accomplishment. And I think if we as a country were to reduce the crime rate significantly, and crime beset a lot of different things. Crime beset pushes people to migrate. You have brain drain. Businesses are concerned. You have extra security you got to put in place. It restricts industry, commerce, economics, business, all these things. People are concerned about their safety. I don't think people realize the effect that crime has on a society and the implications to it. And if you think about most of the countries in the world that are deemed to be really safe, you look at the economy and you can see that it really aligns really well. Right? You look at the countries you deem safe, whether they say Japan, for example, or some of the countries in Asia, or you go to Western Europe, you'd be amazed how the economy, how the safety of that environment, crime in that environment, and how well the country does economically, how they're aligned in a lot of respects, right? And if Jamaica had less crime, less corruption, more people want to invest in the country, which generate economic activity, which put money in people's pocket, which reduces the need for people to do things which are unscrupulous, frankly. It doesn't mean it eliminates it, but it mitigates it in some respects. And you'd be amazed how that helps a lot. And one of the reasons why I mentioned El Salvador is because they have taken what I call real draconian measures, right? Significantly limits civil liberties, but it's like doing evil to get rid of evil, frankly, which is really an interesting way to approach these things. So it supposedly is the lesser of two evils, and it's seen that the country, I think he's getting really active with over 80%. So therefore, people address. I think people appreciate and value the lesser of the two evils, frankly. But yeah, I don't know. I know you see these comments in the chat. I do not know, frankly, if we have the number one selling jersey, because you think about some of the larger footballing nation and their fan base. It'd be great if we were, but I can't say that we are. So I have to do some more research on that, and I'll come back in one of these forums and talk about that. But if we are, I would love to know what the percentage we get from the sale of each jersey or each merchandise, because it may not be jersey, right? It could be sweatsuit, could be shorts, whatever it is. I would love to know how much the JFF gets from the sale of each jersey. Bless up Rockford. Thanks for joining. So Football Guru was saying, we have to be grateful for what we have. Imagine if many people were to come to Jamaica. Pollution, drug, prostitution, other ills would be of the chain. Football Guru, really? So Football Guru. So is everybody trying to go to Europe and America? You know why they try to come here? Why they try to go to Europe? Because they be thinking of a better life. When you have all those resources at disposal and those industries, you're attracting people who want to do well. That's why they come. Will you have unscrupulous people are part of it? Yes, but what we have in Jamaica now is not what we should desire to be. People shouldn't be afraid to come out of their house. People shouldn't have burger bars everywhere. People shouldn't be concerned that they can go out in the environment and not be worried about something happened to them, unfortunate happened to them. Come on, Football Guru, you know better than this. That cannot be the rationale you want to put forward as to why the status quo should remain. Come on. The only people benefiting from the status quo is the criminals and the politicians. So I would never say that, actually. I think we would love, one when I grew up in Jamaica, we didn't have this crime that we have now. We probably had some crime in the ghettos in Kingston, but I lived in 7 different places in Jamaica. And when I look back at it in history, it's like being a nomad in 3 different parishes. But apart from Kingston, and even Montego Bay, you didn't have all this situation you have now. It's crazy. Everywhere in Jamaica is challenged. I shouldn't say everywhere. A lot of places are challenged. Some places which nobody even go to have tons of people who are doing unscrupulous things, especially when you have like things like scamming occurring. So, Football Guru, you and I are on 2 different sides of this equation. When people want to come to your country, then you're going to be like here, where you're trying to keep them out because you're so attractive in what you have to offer. You should always aspire for that, right? If you look across the globe, country people are trying to get into. So you look at Asia, maybe it's Japan, in the language is different, South Korea. People are not clamoring to go to China, frankly, because of their government and how they operate. I mean, democratic. But you go to some of these countries, you go to Japan, it is so safe to walk on the street of Tokyo. You go to Hong Kong or South Korea, for example, Seoul, you don't feel that same level of anxiety as you feel at some place in some other countries which are unsafe. You go to the UK, for example, you go to Barcelona, you go to Madrid, you don't feel that same sense of trepidation. But you don't want to be in that situation. You don't want to feel that way. So the first thing people want to do is feel safe. That's the most important thing in your life, right? Because without life, then you're not living. So you want to feel safe. Anything about everything else. You want to feel safe, and then you want to have the basic human needs satisfied. You want to have housing. You want to have good health care. You want to generate enough income, right? You want to have a fair criminal justice system. So I can't buy that notion, Football Guru, about, well, what we have now may be good because people want to come visit us. I can't agree with that. Football Guru, so you're saying you're happy with the state of things in Jamaica. I'll tell you I'm not. And I have a lot of friends who are not. So I am not. I have a lot of friends who are not. And some friends I have, I've said this numerous times, they're not coming back to Jamaica to live. Even though they would love to do so, they're not coming back to live. They don't want to have to deal with things which they make them feel unsafe, actually, which is sad. Because I think a lot of people migrate with the view that they're going to go back to Jamaica to live, or their home country, not necessarily Jamaica per se. I give an example, and I keep mentioning El Salvador. If you read some of the stories in El Salvador 3 years ago, where crime was rampant, where the gangs were rampant, where extortion was the norm, where people get killed just but nothing. You don't do what the gang says, they kill you. And now it's different because the government has been draconian, lock up all the gang members. If you have a tattoo that says you have a gang member, you go to jail. And those jails, even though they build a new one with 40,000 inmates, those jails are unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen much like that in terms of how rigid it was, how strict it was, and how, even though in new jails, how inhumane the conditions were, wherein you have 100 people to a cell. Now they're big cells and 2 commodes. I don't even want to talk about this. It's ridiculous. But the point I'm trying to raise is, at some point, when people feel unsafe, and by the way, people are embracing this in El Salvador, and not to keep talking about El Salvador, people are embracing this. They're not regressing from it. They're embracing it because they want to feel safe. So it's important. Brian was saying, if crime was reduced significantly, the economy would thrive. The diaspora is waiting to invest, but many are fearful. That's a fact. It's not only the diaspora. Countries like Spain, you have families in Spain who buy up all the attractive properties on the coast to build their great hotels and take money out of the country. That's the investment we're getting, which is not investment, which was going to help you from an employment standpoint. That's not what you want. You want the money to stay in the country. You don't want some people to come take the money out who are not part of your organization, and then you're not benefiting from them as well as you can. They come in, we go to Spain, we get the money from them to invest in our country, and they take the money out of the country and build up their society. And as I always said this, $1 can be $10, can be $50, can be $100 if it circulates in your economy versus, yes, you may get $2 or $3 from that investment, but then it goes out of the country and goes someplace else to get circulated. So I'm not buying that notion. the crime is a deterrent to economic prosperity. And the biggest reason why we have the crime is mainly two things. One is poverty and one is education. You show me in the world where a very educated society have a ton of crime, frankly, or in the world where the society is doing well financially, that doesn't have the same level of corruption that you see in some places, and they're not doing well. And in fact, the economy and the education a lot of time go hand in hand, right? Always. Because in some places where you have natural resources which are valued, like in Nigeria, for example, because of waste and mismanagement, the society doesn't do well. So the football guru is saying, I'm not happy with it, but it would not be important to me if it keeps people away. My observation that people look at countries like Jamaica and eat them out of their valuables. Football guru. They're doing that now. You just can't see it. What are you talking about? They're doing that now. They just mentioned, I'm not sure people are thinking, the people who are investing in the country don't have to come there to live. They're not exposed to the violence. They are where they are. They put the money in, they pull the money out. They're getting significant return. They're taking more risk. In fact, in Jamaica, you're not taking a ton of risk if you're building hotels on the coast, frankly. They're generating a ton of great return on their investment with limited risk. They're getting access. They give us access to their capital, and they pull a lot of money out of the country. And by the way, if they weren't getting a great return on their investment, they wouldn't come to Jamaica to invest. So when we go to Spain and think we're the one getting over, they're the ones getting over. We're benefiting because they're generating economic activity with the capital, but they're generating much more than we get someplace else. And it's a risk-reward business. The more difficult the environment, the more risky the environment, the higher return I want. Well, Jamaican environment is risky in some respect, but not for that invested capital. They're getting their money back. So football guru, you and I will not agree tonight on some of these things. I do think that the crime is a deterrent for a lot of things, actually. It facilitates migration. It prevents investment. It creates anxiety. It does a lot of things which are just negative in nature. There's nothing that crime does that's beneficial. Oh, by the way, I have to tell you guys this story, and I don't remember all aspects of it, but the president for El Salvador, let me go back to El Salvador again. I'm not sure why I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. He mentioned that he was speaking to, I think it was the IMF, and they were trying to explain to him that he should be careful about his approach on trying to significantly reduce crime. And we talk about the prisons that they build and how much people get, and they have locked up, I think they built a prison for 40,000, they have locked up 70,000, it's growing. But he was being told by the IMF that you have to be very careful because when you put all these people away, they're no longer productive citizens. And the underworld, so the illicit activities and the crime, is part of the economy and help with economic development and growth, which is a really interesting construct because it generates illicit funds that they can put into the general society, and that helps, right? And it was a long story about how he's explaining how the IMF communicated this to him. So even the IMF personnel, I wouldn't call it the IMF itself, was saying there's benefits from an illicit environment where we have crimes occurring and illegal activities because it also helps the general society. And his view was very interesting, which is that may be the case. No one can dispute that. But if you're creating a society which is safer, you'll get much more from economic from the society than the one where crime is manifested itself, where crime is fostering, where crime is creating all this havoc. Because what happens is, as we have talked about here tonight, much more people want to invest in that society, right? People are safer, they'll take more risk, they'll invest more, extortion will go down, we'll have much more transportation, stores, all these things. If you compare and contrast the illegality in the society and the crime with a more normalized society where crime is reduced significantly, you can actually substantiate and quantify the difference between the two. And the one with less crime is a more thriving society. cause industries will flourish, versus one where you think crime is also added to society, but not at the level it needs to, and it create all sort of other problems which one don't want in your society, right? So interesting. Football guru, you ready to go down this road? You know why Cuba kept imperialists out? Yeah, football guru. It's my understanding is that if you go to Cuba, you think you're in the 19th century. That's all I'll say about that. And we're in the 21st century. So Cuba is not a model for everything. When Russia shut off the money pipe in Cuba, they went down the drain. Even though they do a great job of producing very smart people, Cuba is not the example for anything. Now, America is the one who was cut off the supply line for Cuba for a lot of different things, but don't use Cuba as a benchmark for everything, anything. Maybe to support certain revolutions like, South Africa and the apartheid regime, or things in Namibia, Zimbabwe way back when, but they're not the example for anything. Given how societies have thrived and improved and where they are, they're not in a good place. So Brandon is saying, our education systems are failed. We have about 15 high schools that are performing at a satisfactory level based on CXC out of 100. Yeah, part of that, Brandon, is a lot of questions around that, right? It's probably the parents need to be blamed. We have moved from football. People talk about social matters for some reason. I've that progressed to that or digressed to that. Don't ask me why. I was talking about football stadiums in El Salvador. I ended up talking about the society in general, but I'm gonna keep on the same trend. If you look at the Caribbean, it's not just Jamaica. And here we go to societies again. How societies are doing, and when societies are flourishing, and people see opportunity for advancement, how they want to be part of that society. A lot of the better teachers in Jamaica are being picked off by the US, right? And Canada. They're migrating. They're giving opportunity to migrate. So you try to go to the embassy in Kingston, they're not giving you a visa, just giving you a visa like that. If you're in Guyana, maybe because they have oil now. But if you're a teacher, if you have certain skills, they may want to take you because they want teachers. So between the pay or lack of pay for the teachers, between teachers going for better opportunities, students not having the same diligence they may need to have, parents not being involved in their kids' life as they should be, there are a lot of factors that informs where we are from an educational standpoint. And people shouldn't look to government to solve this problem. You have the kid, you make sure the kid has the right environment to operate in and grow in. Stop looking for government to solve your problem for you. Solve your own problem. Now, in terms of the schooling and the teachers, yes, government have to make sure we have the right teachers with the right skill set in the schools to teach the kids, but parents got to take more obligation and more accountability for their kids and their kids' learning and if kids grow. So, yeah. Football guru, I said to you before, when Cuba was generating revenues from, first of all, Cuba was a communist society and people didn't have any rights, right? So if you want a kind of society, which is what we're seeing in El Salvador in some respect, though it's not communist, that's one thing. Secondly, they were getting resources from Russia at one point when we had the Cold War and Russia was pouring money into Cuba. Cuba was never a self-sustaining society. So we could get into that whole conversation about that. And yes, the US have a lot to do with Cuba and its demise, but Cuba is not the example to use for anything. Not the example. Rockford is saying the crime in Jamaica significantly affected every aspect of life. Yes, it has. And it's not getting any better, Rockford. It's one thing to see something at the end of the rainbow that gives you hope, but it's not happening. People are getting more and more concerned about the situation because it's going in one direction. It's not going up. And I saw somebody was doing a comparison. I don't have the stat with me. I could look it up actually. And I can't authenticate the stat. So I always have to get information from its original source, substantiated. But I'm going to read what I see here, example. So they were showing you murder homicide rate by country from 2017 to 2021. And it showed you the number of people killed per 100,000. Right? And tell me who was number one. Number one in 2017 was El Salvador. And Jamaica trying to tell El Salvador, don't leave me alone, I'm catching up to you. And come to 2021, El Salvador was way down the totem pole. And Jamaica said, I'm now at the top of the mountaintop, I want to stay there. That's how I read this here. So, yeah, it's not good. Now, the way El Salvador solved their problem was, it's saying here they had 73,000 arrests and crime rate falling like a brick because if the people who are doing the killing are in the jail, they can't kill anybody except the people who are in the jail with them. So, yeah. And when they bring that to the president, he says, there are three situations for these people. They should, which is not funny, but it's interesting. He said they should either be in jail, they should be in the hospital, or they should be dead. That's how we think about these people. And my view is that Jamaica has to find a way, not to be a draconian as El Salvador, but crime is not just, and look, El Salvador will not solve its crime problem by locking up people. That's not going to solve it. It may look good, it may go down significantly, but is that sustainable? And civil liberty is going to be dead. Is one evil going to fix the other evil? And is that sustainable? It may not be. So they have to figure out a better way to address the situation. And maybe it will be done through economic activity where you improve people's lives and improve their education and create opportunities. And they don't feel that desperate need to do something, or they're not educated enough to make good decisions and put themselves in a better place. But I want to go back to the football because I'm almost at the end of this. I said I was going to be here. I tell myself I was going to be here for an hour, and it's been almost 2 hours, actually. I'm going to close up by saying a couple of things on the football. One is that the JFF now is going to have its election, right? Because it's been given the go-ahead to move forward, given the injunction that was put in place has now been lifted. My hope would be that the JFF follow its own flawed constitution. When you read the constitution, it has holes in it, but making sure the electorate process is transparent. They have an independent electoral committee that's overseeing the elections. The electorate, each of the electorate are people in different tiers, 1, 2, and 3 qualify to vote in the election. That's transparent to everyone. And they try to make the election as fair as possible so the best team can win, even though it's the same team. Same team with just different people in some aspect, right? Let's hope that's the case, because that's important. And that we can actually move forward with playing and enjoying our football versus being inundated with these administrative things, which we shouldn't be concerned about. It should be in the background. It shouldn't be in the forefront, right? And hopefully that's the case whereby we can say that, you know what, we had some problems in the past. They've been resolved. We have our best players, both male and female, and at junior level involved. We have, I'm going to touch upon this, a system where a citizen of the country has and you hear me talk about this 101 times. I'm going to say before I finish this monologue. The citizen of the country who has the capability, who has the qualification, who have the skill set, is allowed to be part of the national program based on merit and not on a quota system. And that no matter what level you are, under 15, under 2, under 1, under 12, that you're giving an equal and fair opportunity to be part of anything in the country and afforded the same rights and privileges as every citizen. Don't make me a citizen of your country if you don't grant me that right as a citizen. Nobody operates like that I know of. Nobody. People may have quotas for people coming to your country, whether it's how many people come from the US to try to get asylum. It's how many players that you have in the UK that can be part of a football team. People don't have quotas in their citizenship unless you have in the US, for example, where affirmative action took place because of past injustices. There are no past injustices that's affected Jamaican society in a sense for the people we're talking about here that should have a quota system in place to preclude certain citizens from being part of the national team because they were born someplace else. Please get rid of this nonsense. And your constitution says you shouldn't discriminate. Follow the constitution. And my last point is this, which is this. I hope the girls, who I have criticized in some instances as to how they have operated, who I thought missed a trick when they engaged with the JFF as to whether they should play or not play in the Gold Cup qualifiers. My hope is that we will see that barrier lifted between the parties. We will see the need to engage and resolve these conflicts because there's a higher calling. The calling is the national team. The calling is being a patriot. The calling is not to be in your feelings about what transpired previously. The calling is more of, you know what? I need to do what's best for my career and the country. And I'm not sure having that impasse is where we should be. I think we really have to think about, or the girls have to think about, which is, are we doing the right thing? What are we? Why are we making ourselves unavailable? What are we trying to achieve by unavailable? Maybe if they can tell the general public, we'll have more appreciation for their position. If that is truly the case, because you have to take everything you get from whatever source nowadays with a grain of salt, because it always seems like we have a difference between the same subject, same things from two different parties. We can never seem to get a consistent story from the affected parties in this situation. You would hope that whatever you're getting is consistent and we know where each party reside and we get to a point where we can get a resolution. And Bobsy Grange, for example, maybe you can be the referee in this case and bring these parties together and get over the line. You can talk to the girls and find out what their grievances are. And maybe you can be that arbitrator to allow the situation to resolve itself because it's not helping anybody. Nobody's winning here, right? The girls are going to come June, look and see the Gold Cup occurring. People talking about the Gold Cup, it's in the news and they're not part of it. And they should be. Travis is saying, Kranky, those girls, I have no remorse for them. They bring the football off in disrepute, and that is no apology. Look, Travis, that's your perspective. I think both parties are to blame. I think even though the girls may have some culpability in this whole situation, I think as the leadership, as the more senior members of this two negotiating group, as the guardians of the football program for the country, I don't think the JFF made their best efforts to try to resolve the impasse and get to a good place. I just don't think they deserve. They will say that they have, but if you walk through the specifics of what they have done, you'll walk away realizing that that may not be the case, frankly. The affected parties have both not done their best to resolve this and get to a good place. So you hope that's the case. But anyway, at time, it's 22:31, 10:31, 22:31 military time. First, I want to say, before you leave the forum, please hit the like button. Second of all, Brando, Big Deal, Travis, Football Guru, Rockford, Duckland, Coach Minzy, Manningsman. I know I can't remember everyone actually has been here. Gunner's Boss was here early. Technique was here early. Fresh God came in later. Everyone's in the chat. I appreciate you being here, being part of the conversation. I try to put up as many comments as possible. I probably be back next week. And by the way, before I go, I'm going to say this. I am going to start my own channel. I haven't decided exactly when yet, but it's between a month and 4 months. I'm going to be like the JFF. I have this broad window. It's between next month but it will be by summer. And I'll be talking about these and other matters, actually. A lot of different things I want to have on my mind to talk about. And I may not get as many subscribers as some of these platforms because I just don't like to talk about, I don't call them trivial things, but just sports. I have a wide level of interest in life and different subjects I want to talk on. I'd love to be most of you to be part of the conversation. I want to be educated, but I also want to hope that I'm providing some information to you that you may find useful. So I plan to have my channel will probably start very bare. We'll probably want to start with music just to start it. But as time progresses, it will have to improve. It can't get any worse when you just start out bare. But I have a lot to talk about. I do appreciate Manningsman allowing me to be part of his forum. I've been on Minz's forum quite a bit. And those are two forums I've really spent a lot of time on. I appreciate them being part of their forums. But I do think I have a ton to say. And I think I will need time to say it. And I want to get Manningsman and Minz in trouble sometimes. So I may restrict myself on their channel. But I have a lot to say. I will have more time at my disposal come in the next month or two or so. So I'll have more time to spend some time in these forums. And frankly, I do spend more time on YouTube, not just speaking in these forums, but just listening, because as a lot of people, I do take onus with the traditional news forum sometime. And sometimes they don't go in depth as I would like them on certain topics and things. And I find that useful. YouTube is a very meaningful forum and platform, even though you have to be very careful about where you get your information sometimes. I think sometimes you think things are authentic or not. It's people's opinion and perspective. But I think they're useful forums. And if you seek out the right ones and the ones with credibility, then it helps to inform you as a person in terms of your knowledge, your learnings, and you can focus on certain things that you want to and sort of get rid of some of the noise. So thanks for being here. Appreciate you being here. Love having you. And hopefully I can do something again in the next, I can't say over the weekend, but at least next week. And by the way, I want to leave by saying, I'm smiling saying this, I hope Arsenal win on Sunday. If you're a Liverpool fan and a Man City fan, I hope you don't win, because we want to make sure we win the league this year. But again, guys, thanks. Take care and have a good night. Peace out.